Hello, YouTube. My name is Zach, and today I have the honor and the privilege of having the great Ross Jennings of Haken here with me, and we're going to have a chat with you guys. How's it going, Ross?
I'm good, my man. Thanks for having me on your channel.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be great. So I've kind of filled him in a little bit about what I do. I actually met him at a VIP that Haken came to Atlanta. I don't remember when it was. It was a few months ago, like maybe December or something like that. And so I got the VIP and met him there. And just thought I'd take a shot in the dark and ask him if he'd be on the channel, and he said yes. So I'm really glad to have you here. So first off, most basic of singing questions. Where did you start singing? Did you have any kind of formal training? What made you start to decide you wanted to become a singer? How old were you when you started singing?
For me, I came into music actually as a guitar player. Singing was never really on the agenda when I was younger, to be honest. So yeah, I had the kind of the regular lessons of how to play the guitar, like music theory, and at some point I would incorporate that into my high school bands. And actually my role was rhythm guitar and backing vocalist, and that's where I really started to develop my skills as a singer and my passion for singing itself, just by harmonizing the lead vocalist all the time.
That makes go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, actually we did a few tracks where I would take lead as well eventually, and this was really the first time I actually got to hear my own voice in the foreground, and it wasn't great, but I could see the potential, perhaps what my voice could be, and that's where the journey began, really.
So what ultimately told you, like, okay, well, I can do this, I can make this, make my voice a lead vocal kind of sound? Was there a specific timbre or a specific quality of it that you liked, or was it?
I had a few people come to me saying, like, actually your voice is kind of cool, it's, this could work. I had a lot of compliments. I actually used to do a lot of karaoke as well. So I would just go crazy and show off there from time to time, and so that's really just hearing feedback from people saying, hey, maybe you should consider going for a lead vocal position. And then further down the line, I actually recorded some stuff, just singer-songwriter music, where I'd play guitar and sing on my own. And this was really just a personal thing. And in the end, this was the music that got me into Haken. The guys, I've known Richard forever, but they heard that stuff. Richard helped me record it, actually. And so this was my route into being a lead vocalist in Haken, whereas originally I was just going to be a guitar player.
Have you always been like a prog fan, or was Haken your first foray into prog music?
Obviously I was aware of a lot of prog music, but my main influences came from really just classic rock genre, and perhaps kind of the indie Britpop stuff from the 90s.
Gotcha.
I listened to a lot of Radiohead and Elbow. We'll talk about them later, I guess. So not really. I wouldn't say prog was like my fundamental influence.
How big of an adjustment as a singer was it to go from singing like more of like a classic rock or like straightforward rock style to more the prog thing with the complexities and all the intricate harmonies and things like that?
It's a good question, because yes, indeed, prog music does incorporate a lot of different styles, and actually a big factor in the singing part anyway is the influences of classical singers. And so yeah, I've learned a lot on this journey, actually, from this being really just a hobby to being a rock band, to producing this music, which is actually a lot more complicated and requires a lot more training and music theory, and it's been a journey.
When you go to, like, I always go back when I say this is what Haken's about, I always kind of show people like the big, you know, middle section of crystallized, you know, with all the like the polyphonic type stuff. When you guys go to compose that, how much of a say so do you have over it? Is it like you lead the charge, or do they kind of give you things to sing? How do you compose that kind of stuff?
Well, that part in particular was written by Richard. So on the piano, I guess. I think that's how he wrote most of his stuff back in the day. So I would really just be asked to kind of hit those notes.
Oh, wow. So how much of a say-so do you get in terms of like the range of the pitches and things like that? Like if you feel like something's too high or too low, do you get to say like, I don't know if my voice can do that or not? Or
actually, I've never really I've always taken on the challenge.
Ah, interesting.
I think my range is quite good.
Yeah.
My low end is not so strong, like in terms of projecting.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the mid range and you know the tenor side of things is actually where my voice is most comfortable, and I like to push it as well. And you know, we're always trying to thrive to become better singers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would take that challenge if it's there, and I did. And these, you know, Crystallize was actually a track that was one of the first pieces of music we wrote on the demo in 2007
Mm-hmm.
from a piece called Snow.
Yeah.
The original version of that song, and so yeah, we were straight from the get-go writing this really complex stuff. Me not being a seasoned vocalist at that point was just thrown in the deep end, and well, I set myself these challenges from the very beginning, actually.
That's cool. Do you feel like it's gotten easier as you've gone? Oh, well, first off, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 35, turned 35 this year in February.
How has it gotten easier for you as it goes on, or does it seem like it's become more difficult to maintain everything and to sing that type of stuff?
No, I actually feel like I'm always learning something new and improving my craft every year. So I feel like I'm sort of in my peak right now.
Yep.
I hope I can improve in the next few years even more. You know, just it's really become a journey of learning on the job and practicing and training that muscle. Like every time I go out on tour, you know.
Have you ever had any lessons or any training from voice teachers or anything like that?
I've never had official voice training from anyone. Like in terms of having regular lessons, I've taken tips along the way. I've obviously gone on to channels such as your own and received advice and it's and also learning on the job. You learn yourself when you're doing it what's working for you, what's not, what are good techniques for your own body, and what are the mistakes and what you should avoid. And that's been my education. I mean, I also go out on tour with a lot of great singers. And recently, Einar.
Oh yeah.
Every night, and actually, I spent most of those shows. I was singing along to their set. That was my warm up. You know, I've been out with Damien Wilson on a short tour of Headspace, and I learned a lot about mic technique from him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess just picking up, you know, do's and don'ts from the professionals along the way. We can all learn from each other. That's the beauty of the business.
When you go on tour, how do you manage that stuff? Like, I mean, singing every night, you know, having to be really energetic for a 2-hour set or whatever. Like, what kind of routines or methods do you use to keep yourself healthy and, you know, not blowing yourself out? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I learned the hard way because, I mean, if you've seen me perform live, I actually like to move a lot.
Oh yeah, you're very active on stage. Very active on stage.
At the very beginning, that would just it would cause me a lot of vocal fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've learned to kind of hone that in a little bit. Also off tour to make sure I'm exercising and eating well, so I can keep that stamina up.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes even to this day I can't help myself. I like to run around. I want to be Bruce Dickinson on that big stage. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard his warm-up this is a rumor, I don't know. His technique to warm up is to go on a treadmill and like sing a bunch of songs whilst running. You know, his thing.
Jeez.
So that's my aim in the long run.
I've never heard that. Like, I mean, I've never considered that as being possible to do. I've never even like thought of that, but that's an interesting thing. I guess that would help you. I guess that would help you keep your, like you said, your stamina. I mean, you know, that's crazy though.
I'm singing a lot of long notes, and whilst running around, and you know, you got to keep that lung capacity up. It's tricky when you're moving so much, you know.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder you see a lot of singers just staying still. I mean, that's probably the best technique. But in the rock and roll context, you know, it's a performance as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I come from the, you know, classical background, and for us, it's all like very stiff, very upright, very, you know, all, you know, everything's very stoic because you have to have everything very stable. But yeah, I mean, I've run into that a lot analyzing various singers on my channel. Is that like these rock guys are all over the place because they're trying to put on a show as well as sing, and so that's an element of it that I don't even experience.
Yeah, I've learnt over the course of doing these shows when are the good moments to actually just stop and breathe and make sure you're getting those notes, because you know, you watch yourself back and you can see why you didn't quite hold that note in pitch as well as you would have liked to, and it's because you were running around like an idiot.
Well, it's a balance, you know.
Or things like if you eat a meal too close to the set.
Oh yeah.
Things like that. I mean, it's happened, you know. People don't think of this stuff when they see you, but these are the kind of small challenges that we face.
Like
you know, if the catering arrives late, then, you know, often I'm screwed. Yeah,
that's definitely, I've experienced that before too, and it can be specific foods that make it worse than others too. But yeah, generally as a whole, I try to eat well before, you know, I'd ever perform. Like in college, if we have like a recital or whatever, I'd always eat couple hours beforehand to make sure that doesn't happen to me too. I always do this with singers that I interview, and I, just out of curiosity, what would you say if you had to pick a single section or a single song from the entire Haken catalog? What is the most difficult to perform in a live setting?
I don't know. I had some trouble with Nocturnal Conspiracy back in the day because we wrote that piece without really considering, you know, how I would perform it live. And the first half of the song, it's just constant singing. There's not really enough time to take breaths. It's verse after verse, and then pre-chorus, and when it came to actually performing that song, I'm like, I've got no time to really take a big breath, and I got this big chorus coming up. And,
yeah, I'm here listening to it in my head, and I can hear that. That's. There's a lot of really long phrases.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if you go back and analyze it, you'll hear like it's just constant. And so yeah, I mean, the last few times we performed it, I've had to kind of just judge when I'm going to breathe. I can do a lot of nasal breathing while singing and trying to train myself in that sense as well. And, so that was a tricky one to overcome. People might not have expected that as an answer, but personally, that was one. Well, it's important to make sure you're considering these things when you're writing and recording them, that's for sure.
That's been a constant thing that people, like everybody I've talked to said, like, make sure you think about how it's going to be when it comes out live when you record it. Yeah, and so if I ever go to record something myself, I'm going to keep that same thing in mind. On the same note, when you build your set list, I know that you guys kind of did like a static set list. I checked the set list you guys played from the last tour, and it was pretty consistent. When you guys pick your set list, do you think about like vocal stamina when you design the order of the set list, or is that even a factor?
I try and get my say in there. Yes. Luckily for us, luckily for me, there's a lot of walking on and off and having a few minutes in each song just to kind of, just
take a breather. Yeah.
People who see me or standing side stage, will witness that. I'm actually taking deep breaths. I'm drinking tea and honey and keeping things warm there.
Yeah.
We've got this track "Nil by Mouth."
Oh yeah.
6 or 7 minutes of
really difficult to perform for you, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I made sure that goes just in the middle of the set. I've got, I don't know half an hour of craziness, and then a bit of zen, and then finish the show with another half an hour, whatever it is. So yeah.
When you guys do vocal harmonies, is it something that you so I guess, well, first let me rephrase this question. When everyone in Haken sings, correct? Like everybody in the band, or is there anyone who doesn't?
I've encouraged everyone to contribute now. I think we've all got a microphone. Everyone can sing. Not everyone's trained, and with everything, people are improving.
Yeah. Do you like plan out, like when you do sections of songs with a lot of vocal harmonies, do you assign people notes ahead of time, or is it like if you know the note, you can sing the note? How do you guys go about doing that in the live setting?
We do, but it's not me who does it. You'll be interested to know that actually Ray, our drummer Raymond Hearn, is the one who's assigning all the parts for the backing vocalists.
Why is that? That's interesting. Why does he do it?
Because he's a very proactive guy, and I'm the lazy one.
Oh, I gotcha.
In truth, though, he's very musically educated to a very high standard, and I think I trust him with his knowledge of note choices and what's right for people, and yeah, it's really a beautiful thing to have a drummer who's so talented like that.
What would you say are things that you could only learn by performing? So like what I mean by that is, I teach all the time, and I teach technique, and I teach people how to sing and how to develop their skill and everything, but there's an element of things that you can only learn by being on the stage. What would you say would be one of those things?
So I guess for me, you get to know your body when you go out there and do it. So you know your limits of what you can push, and I think, you can actually learn that in lessons, like what your range is, and you can expand that. But I think similarly to what we talked about, in terms of vocal stamina and what you can achieve in the context of a rock performance, in that sense, that you can really only learn that when you go out and do it and put on your show and tailor it to your voice.
Gotcha.
I guess I don't know. I haven't really given it that much thought.
That's okay. No, that's okay. I thought that's kind of a curveball. I threw at you. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm not certain. But that was definitely one for me. I know we talked about it a little bit already, but
how much does the audience fuel your ability to, put yourself out there and perform more openly or more aggressively?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it goes for the whole band, actually. It seems that the more energy you get from a crowd, it definitely feeds off each other, and the more you put back. So
yeah,
we've played to a lot of seated audiences in the past, mm-hmm. and we're doing our thing. It doesn't look like we're bored or anything. We're putting on our show, but like we're looking at each other, going, "Are you feeling it? Are they feeling it? We're doing something wrong?" Whereas if you go and you're up against an audience who are really giving it and singing along and shouting the words back at you and jumping around, you want to give more, but actually that could be dangerous.
I was going to ask you that next. That was my next question. Is like, do you have to dial yourself back in that sense?
Yeah, there is a level of where you have to kind of control, because you can hear yourself pushing if you're not too careful, and you don't want to cause any damage by doing that. But I also have this when we play bigger venues as well, and it's almost like you have an instinct to kind of sing as loud as you can to the back of the room.
That's
what you
opera.
forget is you don't. It doesn't matter what size place you're in. You're doing the same performance to the same microphone, and that really is the job for the sound engineer to reach the back of the room. You know, but it's just, I guess, it's a human tendency to you want to reach those people and push it that much harder. So I've learned that lesson as well.
How do you balance yourself from like I don't, you know, I guess I see in classical settings, so I don't ever have to deal with this, so I'm completely ignorant about this. When you have all this big instruments, all the loud amps and everything going on around you and you're singing, how do you manage to keep yourself singing within like a volume level that isn't pushing too hard? Like, how do you balance that out? Because I'm sure that it's very loud around you when you're on stage.
I can talk a lot about this because currently we are mostly plugged directly into direct inputs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you will notice at a Haken show, there are no amplifiers on stage. It's because everything's going directly into the desk, being pumped out through the front of house speakers, with the exception, of course, being the drums. So this is one thing we do now. So actually, the stage volume is not that loud, with the exception of the drums really going for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We all have in-ear monitors, so we do have a lot of control over the volume of each instrument. So currently in a Haken show, there's a lot of control over that kind of thing. However, there are certain, I can only talk from my own experience,
Mm-hmm.
there are certain things in our music coming from kind of low-end riffs, that's layered up. You've got two guitarists and a bass guitar all doing kind of the low-frequency stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Diego on the keyboards also is not just playing piano. He's got this whole sound design thing going on,
Mm-hmm.
and actually that consume a lot of the frequencies. So if you're not careful in your mix, actually it can be quite overwhelming, and it makes you want to push harder. So it's we're quite fortunate to be able to have that control. A lot of bands won't have that, and actually, you know, and for many years, Haken operated like that. We had the drums and the bass amp on stage. Everything else was still direct at that point, I think. And we had a lot of stuff just coming through wedges, and we didn't have our in-ear monitors or any of that control. So, yeah, stage volume was extremely loud, and that's perilous for any singer.
Yeah, I could imagine it's easier now.
You always want to hear yourself
Right.
above everything.
Yeah.
Yet you want the atmosphere of the room and the music and the power, the energy. So it's a tricky one, and I've actually come away from shows in the earlier stages of Haken's career, and I just felt completely hoarse. You know, I wouldn't have been able to do the kind of tours that we do now, using wedges and amps, and it's crazy. So it's a technique now. There's a lot of opportunities for musicians to have that technology on stage and have that control, which is it's a godsend for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I can't imagine what it'll be like trying to sing with like this huge, like massive cabinet beside you, you know, blaring in your ear. That seems like it'd be incredibly difficult. Yeah. Let's switch to the studio side of things, because this is something that I also don't have a ton of experience in. When you go to record an album, okay, and you've got all your parts for whatever the songs, you know, laid out for you, and you're ready to go, how do you manage how much of it you're going to do at a time? Like, let me kind of preface this a little bit. I would imagine that the more takes you do of something and the more you try, it's probably going to get somewhat progressively worse, because your voice will get more tired. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So how do you go into it managing that? Do you just say, I'm going to look at only my first takes, or I'm going to try to look at a little bit of everything? Like, how does that work?
So I'm going to think about how we did the last record. Right, so with our music, there's usually, distinctive sections, especially in how I deliver vocals. I have some kind of gnarlier, grittier stuff, and then I have the cleaner, more delicate stuff. And generally speaking, I want to leave that raw stuff till later. I want to focus on the clean stuff, the steady, the choruses as well. I usually want to get those out while my voice is strong. So that's one approach. Just thinking back, really, I think usually what I would try and do is run through like most of the song in one take, and I want to focus on like what's working, what's not, what do I need to work on, and then I'd do another couple of takes, just the full thing. And then if there's any particular lines which are not happening in terms of performance-wise, pitch, whatever it is, I would go back and we would typically re-record, drop in those sections and try and get a better performance, one that's matching. It's quite tricky to do because we always like to have it consistent. And if you're dropping in stuff, suddenly you can start to hear, actually no, it sounds like a different take, so that's not good.
So you try to base as much of it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I think you were about to second guess what I was going to say. Typically, I'd like to get as much in one take or a few takes as possible. And even if you're using, take one for that line, take two for that line, you've done it in a similar kind of time frame, and it's not been just jumped around in different times of the day or anything like that. So.
Do you find that the earlier takes tend to have more of what you're looking for in like, I guess, the expressiveness of things anyway, or does it seem like that is something that develops more as you sing it more?
It develops more as I sing it more, I feel. There has been occasions where I've done 17 takes, and actually number one was actually the one. Yeah. I don't know why I do all that, but we'll just use the first one because there comes a point, I feel, you exhaust that and you get a brain block or whatever it is, and for whatever reason you're just not hitting it, and so that can be a dangerous thing to just do too many takes. I think I don't.
Do you set limits for yourself in the studio about like how long you'll work on something before you stop?
So with Vector, we aim to do I think it was 2 days per song. But obviously they weren't full days. That would be crazy. I would pretty much limit myself to kind of 4 hours of singing.
Wow.
Take a break, like a long break, and then return for another few hours, and then call it a day. And that's the thing.
That is.
It is brutal. Yeah, it is brutal.
7, like up to 7 hours.
Yeah, but I always make sure I'm, got my water.
Oh yeah. I mean.
Well, and with that, I'm properly warmed up beforehand. I wouldn't have it any other way,
Yeah.
And in between takes, you come out and you breathe and you listen to the stuff back. So it's not like constantly 4 hours, but it's it's a long period of time. It requires a similar amount of stamina, I think.
Yeah, I've heard from many people that studio singing can be more demanding than actual stage singing in lots of ways, because it's so draining, and you have to think like all this has to get done in this amount of time. We don't have infinite time to do this. So whereas when you go live, you just, whatever you put out there is what's out there, and then it's in the nether, and it's over.
Part of the reason it takes so long is, I mean, for us, actually, we're still writing it to the wire. We could have demoed a lot of the stuff, do the final takes, and actually I want to change that now, actually, and I want to sing it this way, and so you go back over and you're kind of rewriting stuff a bit like, I guess, script writers do when they're making movies. It's last minute changes, and actually this lyric's not sitting well with me anymore, I want to change that, and you kind of hear stuff when it's going in the can. This is the final take, this is the one people are going to hear forever, and so it's a lot of pressure on that, and it's worth spending that time to get it right, I think.
How much how much would you say the final product changes from what you plan for it to be from when you go into the studio to when everything's done with?
I think. I mean, I think we're talking details really. Overall, you have an aim, you set out to achieve certain sound, certain performance, and let's not forget we've got 6 people with very contrasting opinions on things,
right.
So things will get changed, but bounced around, and so I mean, I think it's really the small details, and it's the I guess. The type of performances in the end, are they sitting well with everybody, and things like that can change. Maybe actually we plan to sing it a little bit harsher, but I think actually your voice in that section would be nicer, a little bit softer, sing it in this style. And I've had all sorts of comments to change certain things, and just different opinions from the other band members, and I always take it on board. It's everyone's product at the end of the day. So
Who are the primary lyric writers in Haken?
So it's always shifting. Initially, it was myself. I wrote all the lyrics for Aquarius and Visions. No one else really got involved with that. So when it came to The Mountain, people had some stuff to say, and they wanted to get involved in putting their lyrics on the demos, and I was really open to that. There's some cool stuff coming out, and actually opened up the vocabulary a little bit more, and we came up with a really meaningful album because of that, and so that's how it continued actually. So nowadays we're all demoing stuff for the next album. We'll all have our own ideas. There'll be a unifying goal, a concept or something, which we can all latch onto, but essentially we'll all put our own ideas, and the final say comes down to me though. I'll proofread everything. I'll make sure it all works with my voice and timbre and whatever it is, because for Vector, Diego and Charlie wrote a lot of the lyrics, and they're natural. I think they're natural baritones actually. So I think Good Doctor was a good example. Charlie wrote all the lyrics for that and sang it himself on a demo, and it was like, oh, electricity. It didn't suit my voice at all, so I had to kind of knock it up an octave and make it work for me. Generally I didn't have to change much lyric-wise, but sometimes you do. There's particular words which don't quite work for me, then I'll adapt, make some edits.
Yeah. Here's kind of a random question. I'm sure the Haken fans will want to hear the answer to too. Do you guys leave little Easter eggs in your lyrics and things for people to pick apart? Do you do that?
Well, that would be telling, wouldn't it?
That's
we always do. Yeah, it's kind of fun actually. We do it in the music as well, and motifs, in guitar line licks or something. But there's plenty of that kind of stuff.
I thought so, yeah, and I'm sure that everyone else suspects it too. I actually, Visions is the album that got me into Haken in the first place, and that's when I first heard you guys. I actually have a question about that album specifically. You say you wrote all the lyrics to it. Well, there's obviously a lot of motivic development throughout that album as well, and a lot of recurring ideas. You use that in the lyrics as well. Did you write the lyrics to match motivic elements, or was it two separate things? Like, how did you kind of converge tying ideas lyrically together with the music?
I think the first piece we wrote was Visions, the title track for that album. So that incorporated already all the kind of the main themes that we wanted to use elsewhere, and like you picked up on, some of the lyrical passages as well, which we'd dispersed throughout the album as well. So the intention was this indeed, was to have a bit like you have in movies when characters return and they have their theme as they walk in, and that's the kind of approach we had with that. So, yes, I guess it was more based on characters in the story, but for sure, it's something we think about a lot. We actually refer to cinema a lot in songwriting. Big inspiration for us is to cinematic motifs and the kind of styles and techniques they adopt in classical music on film. This is a big thing for us. Yeah,
that's cool. All right, so let me ask you about Affinity. Okay. On the Architect, when you guys got Einar to come and do the harsh vocals, the screaming part, what was your reasoning behind that? Why? I mean, obviously he's an incredible vocalist as well. So what made you decide I want to put Einar in that part?
In honesty, I didn't get a lot of say on the matter. I wanted to do it actually, but I'm not really a natural harsh vocal singer.
Yeah, me neither.
And to be honest, I don't really want to be.
You said you do want to be, or you don't want to be?
I don't really want to. No, because I don't know. It's kind of fun to do in little moments, but I could not imagine singing that way every night for the rest of my life. It's
yeah.
But it would have been cool to do that. But the general consensus of the band was to have a guest, and I was happy to roll with that. Yeah, for sure. And Einar's great, and yeah, I thought it was cool. And also, I get to do it live anyway, so not too bitter or anything.
Yeah.
I thought it was a nice touch for the album.
You said that when you went on tour with Leprous, you said that you've learned specific things from the people you toured with, like Einar, for example. What kind of things would you say that you've taken from him that he gave you as advice, or pointers, things like that?
So, I mean, you watch people's mic techniques. You watch, how they're breathing or positioning their mouths and things like that, and how they're hitting high notes and what parts of the bodies they're using to reach that and stuff. I can't really, specifically, he hasn't come to me and given me tips or anything.
Gotcha. Oh, I see. I gotcha. Okay.
But it's really just watching others and picking up on something you might not have thought of before, and how to hit a note. Yeah, usually I'm self-taught with that kind of stuff. So yeah, if it feels like you're damaging your vocal cords or anything like that, then you think of another way to achieve something. But yeah, so yeah, I really take inspiration from a lot of other singers we've worked with, and also how watching their warm-up techniques and things like that. So.
When you tour, how do you I'm sure that there's songs that you guys play more often than others. There's probably something that pops in your head immediately that you think okay, we've done this song a million times. How do you channel that energy to bring, to keep that from becoming a stale performance? Because when I saw you guys, I didn't think that you guys were stale at all. I thought that it was a very fun, engaging performance. But I'm sure that there has to have been at least one song on that set list that all of you were like, okay, here goes that song again, or something like that. How do you keep that inspired?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons we dropped Cockroach King from the US set, actually. We were getting really fed up with playing that song. Huh. And, we'd done it every show since 2013 when we released it, so it was long overdue to just have a break from that. But then we brought it back for a few shows, actually. We had some technical problems, I think, in Denmark. And what do we do? Got nothing else planned, so we just went on and did Cockroach King, and it was great fun again. We'd had a month of not doing it, and just that was enough to kind of bring the spark back. I don't know. I think we find ways of making it interesting every night. I can always hear Diego or Connor doing something different. Maybe the untrained ear might not hear, but it's like a little musical joke, I would say, in some of these songs, which they'd slip in, and we'd all hear it, and it would kind of cheer us up and keep things fresh. Yeah.
Well, so I actually took a recording of the Atlantis show. Well, some of it. I got some of it. I wonder if there's any of that. I wonder if any of that is in there. It makes me want to go back and look. What would I look for if I wanted to hear that kind of? Is it something that is obvious if you pay attention to it, or is it kind of things that are very subtle?
It's probably really subtle. In Cockroach King is a great example because there's a lot of chance for Diego and Connor to ad-lib and their piano trade-off and things like that.
Oh, Ray, okay, I see.
Yeah, Ray also has his moments of switching up some drum beats and things like that. So it just keeps things fresh. I think it's always cool to not to be so strict to the album version. I mean, on your recording, we were playing Vector stuff for the first time, so you probably won't hear much of that. But yeah, maybe listen to the older songs to see if there's any nuances that. I don't know. I can't remember from the show particularly.
That's okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't expect. Oh, Atlanta at 8:30 p.m. exactly. What did you do? No, I wouldn't expect you to remember something like that. When you say that you want to stick, you don't necessarily stick all the time to what the song is. How much freedom do you guys like plan out to have in like improvisatory sections? I know this isn't specifically related to vocals, but when you guys will have like your solo sections and things like that, how much do they play with it and say, okay, well, we might extend this a little bit more just to have fun or whatever? Do you guys do that very much?
We don't do it a lot, actually. So like I think that part in Cockroach King is a good example, but we've done it in Nocturnal Conspiracy as well, where we've extended the bass solo and piano solo sections. But actually we're quite limited because we have kind of programmed lights now, and everything's kind of running to a click, so there's not a lot of opportunity just to kind of drop the beat, let's just get the audience going or whatever, anything like that, because it's all locked into a kind of show pattern now, which is a shame actually. I kind of like the loose rock and roll style, seeing where things go personally, but it's I think for the kind of music we do, it's too complicated to really go off on tangents, and we need to just stick to what's written, and that's fair enough.
Okay, I got two more questions for you. First question is, are there any songs in the Haken catalog that you guys have just conclusively decided like we're not going to do this live anymore for whatever reason?
I think people got a little bit sick of playing the Aquarius stuff, but give it time. I'm sure that will come around again. We actually did it quite nicely in the Aqua Medley tour a couple of years ago. So that was a nice way to kind of draw a line under some of that stuff and maybe put that to bed for a while. We have to consider, though, obviously we're making new fans all the time, so a lot of people wouldn't have heard like Celestial Elixir live, for example. But for us, we've like been playing that for most shows, like for the first half of our career. But I can't really think of anything else that we're fed up with, per se. I would say actually the opposite. There's quite a few songs that we've never played, and I would love to perform. Earthlings is one. It's the ballad from the Restoration EP.
Oh yeah, I love that song.
Lapse from Affinity is one we've only ever played live once.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
We did it on a cruise performance once, and never again.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's definitely one that we want to kind of throw into the set at some point. There's always new things to come in future Haken shows. Cool.
Last question, and this is kind of a more generalized one. For all the people out there who are aspiring singers, all the people that are trying to, be in rock bands, be frontmen, what would you say is the number one, like, cardinal piece of advice that you learned that you could give them?
Stay healthy, and get to know your body and your limits and what you can do. I don't know if that sounds too vague, but you really you don't want to push and hurt yourself at all. If there's something you want to achieve, a particular pitch, you want to work your way up slowly to that. Warm-ups are essential, like especially for touring musicians. You don't want to just go in cold to a rock and roll show and do that every night, because you'll blow out. That's for certain.
Yeah.
I have some really cool kind of warm-up things just on my iPod or on my phone. I do like an hour before a show, going through scales and different intervals, and it just gets me through my whole range comfortably, and then I'm ready to go. It's so important for me, and just health is a big thing for me. you could burn out if you're eating too many carbs and not enough nutrition, not enough vitamins, and reducing the amount of alcohol and things like that when you're on the road. It's just so important to really maintain a healthy kind of diet as well. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I thank you for making the music that you do. Haken has been one of my absolute favorite bands for the past, 10 years. I don't know. So
thanks, man. It's our pleasure. It's a real labor of love,
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Keep singing, and goodbye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.